Hey guys, it's Paul, combat veteran, MMA fighter, YouTuber. Today we are checking out Warhammer 40k's fan film, Death Korps of Krieg. Now, this has been super popular, says it's had almost a million views, and it's less than 4 weeks old. So I'm excited to check this out. Now, before we get started, of course, hit the like button so that the YouTube algorithm knows I'm making quality content. And of course, subscribe to hear me weigh in on more wild films, movies, trailers, games, you name it. Okay, now that that's done, let's get started. Okay, so here's what's interesting. You've got your infantry dismounts, you've got your tanks, your heavy armor, and it looks like they're moving in kind of that World War II style formation where your dismounts stay around the tanks to protect them from small light infantry, right? Because tanks are great at reaching out and destroying other heavy armor targets, or large like groups at a distance, but up close they are still very vulnerable and they need infantry to protect them. So that's why you see tanks and infantry often move together. All right, so this is all very interesting. This is using technology from an amalgamation of different wars. So we saw the tanker had a helmet with a sort of cotton or like reinforced ridges, and they had the earmuffs, which normally would have headphones in it to allow crew members in the tank to talk to one another and not have to shout over the roar of the engines. But you also see here, despite obviously being a mechanized force, here is a horse. And not just a horse, but these horses and their riders are wearing gas masks, which are used, of course, in an environment where chemical weapons of a certain type have been deployed, right? But why are they wearing gas masks when the tank hatches are also open? No one else is wearing gas masks. Okay, so I'm now just intrigued. Also, that style of helmet, right, with the coming down and the flared out bottom, that's sometimes called the Stahlhelm style. And believe it or not, it's actually found to be scientifically one of the most effective designs because on the human brain, the most sensitive part is the back. Right, this is if you take a hard blow here, can easily be fatal because this is where your body's essential functions are located: heartbeat, respiration, basic, other fundamental biological functions. So a helmet that comes down and out and actually covers the back of the neck is more effective than a helmet that just say stops right here. What's interesting is that actually armies have known this for a while, but because it was used in the First and Second World War by Germany, the negative connotations are so great that it wasn't until around the 2010s that at least the U.S. Army finally said, okay, we need to adopt a new style of helmet that comes all the way down and protects the back of the neck. Oh, interesting. Okay, so there's the hand and arm signals, right? This is halt, remember? And of course, this is stop. So this person must believe that there is something really imminent. Now, here's what's sort of interesting to me is that halt usually, when you want your team to stop immediately, it's because you need them to stop moving, stop making noise, that there's some sort of danger that's so imminent that you need them to suddenly become like very, very quiet and stealthy, or there's something like a minefield where even the small amount of movement of, say, taking a knee or like taking 2 more steps to get behind cover is too risky. So I'm curious to see what this person believes the threat is. Alright, kind of an interesting tactical choice. I sort of see it, but what you may do... Okay, so, again, because of this weird technology, I don't know what they can and cannot do, but if you knew the enemy was right behind a tree or was hiding and getting ready to ambush you, what you might do instead is use your comms and maybe inside your helmet and tell your tank, be like, hey, I need you to put rounds, 50, 100, 200 meters to my 3 o'clock. You see the cluster of trees there. I think there's some enemy, right? Because if you're going to ambush them, you want to hit them with your biggest blow right away. And again, for him to use his small arms to initiate the ambush, right, or the counter ambush, really, I guess, that is not using those tanks to their full advantage. But I know he's an Astartes, and I'm sure they would be like deeply offended at the idea of allowing, a mere regular human and their tank to engage the enemy first. Oh, nice. That's beautiful. Definitely how an anti-armor team would work. Exactly the kind of shot that you want, broadside on the enemy armor. And you can see here, right, the tank they took out was the lead tank. And that's tactically sound because think about it. Tanks are driving down a road in a row, and especially in a forest, tanks cannot necessarily come off the road. Those trees are blocking their way. So by destroying the lead tank, you've trapped the tanks behind it in their current positions. Okay, so here's what's interesting. Again, doctrinally sort of sound. If you get caught in an ambush, and it's a near ambush, pushing the enemy quickly and hard is actually a good strategy, especially if you can gain fire superiority, which again, it looks like they can. They have tanks in the fight, they're putting down rounds, and they're pushing that enemy because you have to think, given that the enemy got to choose the location of the battle, they are going to be in a very advantageous position, and the worst position is going to be the folks being ambushed. So you want to, as quickly as possible, change the fundamental character of the fight, and that involves either getting out of the ambush zone or pushing the ambushing element. Again, sort of a fascinating technological mishmash here. You can see the tanker has radio comms. They have radio technology in this scenario. But the enemy Astartes is clearly using hand and arm signals to drive his folks forward, even though the battle's already on. But who knows? Maybe these regular human forces just don't have comms, right? They are, in Warhammer lore, famously poorly equipped. Don't know much about lore. Not sure why they were able to just ride through a hail of lasers. If someone knows why this was possible in lore, let me know. I will tell you that cavalry charges became tactically obsolete the day that the machine gun, or the repeating, really the light machine gun, was invented. Against that hail of continuous fire, horses are just too big a target, and they are too easily crippled. And of course, the idea of not only fighting on horseback, which is sort of ridiculous, but that they aren't even using weapons at all is also sort of insane. They're using spears. So this would be a tactic that you might see used by like Alexander the Great, in 2000 BC. Cavalry charges have a long history, but even by World War I, these cavalry troops were equipped with repeating rifles, usually carbines. And again, think of the cavalry, even I think by the First World War, were primarily scouts. They were meant to range out ahead of the main body, gather intelligence, gather reconnaissance, maybe sort of start an engagement to pin your enemies in place while your main body comes up and reinforces and really engages in the fight. But a charge of horses is like medieval tactically. So they have laser guns. They have repeating firearms, and yet they chose to charge with spears. This is truly Warhammer 40k level insane, which I appreciate. Actually, I appreciate the fact that Warhammer 40k is completely over the top, wild, and ridiculous. Okay, fun detail. Did you see their backpacks were those square packs with a roll at the bottom? So those square packs, those haversacks, are actually what soldiers in World War I might have been issued, and those rolled blankets are actually bedrolls, or at least if they are following World War I protocol. So those bedrolls would have been something like a tarp or an oiled sheet and a wool blanket, and you sort of form your own protected waterproof sleeping bag with them. Fun fact. Okay, so interesting. Flares to illuminate the battlefield, very, very classic. And that it actually makes perfect sense if the officer in charge sees that the enemy forces have entered the open area and are in an engagement zone, but your troops cannot see them. Then firing a flare to help illuminate the battlefield is going to really allow your troops to engage them effectively, especially because flares create long shadows, and that makes it even easier to see where the enemy are coming from. Okay, so those guns there were, again, World War I style artillery pieces. The simple wheels would have been towed by horses or early carts. Those short barrels were meant to, not like modern howitzers, which can shoot, miles and miles and miles, 10 plus miles. These short barrels were meant to deliver a lot of fire, be very mobile, but not that far removed from the front lines. Oh, there you go. You see that? just like we talked about in Tarkov, enemy in front of you. Okay, I know in Warhammer there is definitely no law of war, right? The only law is war. But that said, if an enemy is down in front of you, do not take the chance that they are playing dead. You should double tap them and then move on, right? Because once you've, again, in our soft law of war era, once you have passed through an enemy territory, once you've seized that territory from them, they are technically your prisoners. So if they're wounded, you have to treat them. And again, if they are just playing dead, now you have potentially an enemy at your back. Okay, you see that guy use the shovel? That's an entrenching tool. Again, something standard issue in World War I and World War II soldiers. It's just a tiny shovel with a big wooden handle. I actually have one, which, by the way, if you guys want to see some of my vintage military gear, let me know in the comments below. I have a bunch of it. It may be fun and interesting. But, again, that is something that is in World War I was used as an improvised weapon. Because the handle was actually kept at a not a razor sharp blade, but a pretty sharp blade, and of course it was super tough, right? Just a heavy oak wood handle and a big pressed metal blade. You could definitely go slicing and dicing people with it, if you didn't have your rifle with a bayonet, which was the preferred hand-to-hand combat weapon of the era. Okay, again, testament to Death Korps of Krieg's just insane levels of risk-tolerant behavior, we're going to say. Normally, in World War I tactics, you prepare to attack the enemy with an artillery barrage, right? You get their heads down, you wound some of them, and then as you stop the barrage, your infantry follows, right? Because you don't want to drop artillery on your own infantry, unless, of course, you're the Death Korps of Krieg, in which case dropping artillery on your infantry while they're on the target is totally acceptable, I guess. Okay, so this is actually a pretty nifty illustration of how tactics may actually occur if we were in a world where you could create something like an Astartes Space Marine, right? Something that blends the distance between light infantry and a tank. And you could see his dismounted infantry, when they came up against that light machine gun, dismounted infantry got to cover and allowed the Astartes and his bolter to take out the machine gunner, and then once that was safe, then the dismounts, the Death Korps soldiers were able to push. That is probably how such a tactic may actually go, right? You would have, in almost the World War I style, you'd have your Astartes push in, your heavily armored Space Marine, push in ahead of the infantry and be effectively walking cover when under heavy fire. Jesus, this is grisly. These guys really don't have a very high regard for themselves and their lives. right, fun fact. So that style of grenade is sometimes called the potato masher grenade, and it's based on a real German style grenade from World War One and World War Two, and it had a long handle and a grenade charge at the top. So what's sort of interesting is that um, the U.S., when they designed their grenades, right, they sort of looked at the cultural norms of the era, and they realized that throwing a baseball was something that most, most or a plurality of recruits already knew how to do, right? Baseball was sort of like the national game. And so it was easy to train them to throw a small circular grenade shaped like a baseball, right? But in Germany, that may not have been the case, and I think we can all agree it's pretty easy to toss a stick and have it spin through the air and get it to more or less go where you want to go. And so, yeah, the Germans decided that was the way to do it. Now, of course, in over-the-top Warhammer 40k world, it's not just one grenade charge, it's like six, which is, totally classic with Warhammer 40k. Appreciate his commitment to not having to hire voice actors. All right, guys. Wow, that was over the top. That was just wild. But you know what? I loved it. I love Warhammer 40k. It's crazy for exactly that reason. Like, it's almost not worth assessing the tactics of Warhammer 40k because everything is so over the top insane, and it's almost supposed to be, right? So, but I enjoyed it. I hope you guys did too. If you did, of course, hit like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see me do more reviews of video games, films, movies, you name it. And if you have other Warhammer 40k fan films that you want me to check out, let me know in the comments below. I'm all about it, right? I'm trying to get a video out, 5 days a week, so I've got all the time to do this sort of content. And this was really fun. You should absolutely check out the original video. I'll put a link to it down below. All right, guys, that's all I had. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you guys next time.